Hello, it's Alex and welcome to Hey Little Thrifter. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 thrillers and mysteries that I read in 2017. These were all 4-star reads for me. I didn't actually end up having any 5-star reads in this genre, maybe I'm just really picky, but these were all fantastic reads. I thoroughly enjoyed them and I highly recommend them. I had a hard time putting them in any kind of top 5 order, so they're not really in any particular order, they're just 5 top books that I read. So in no particular order, first up we have The Likeness by Tana. This is the second book in the Dublin Murder Squad series. The first book, In the Woods, was one I read a year or two ago and really enjoyed, and I definitely want to continue with the series. This follows the story of a university student who is murdered, and it turns out she looks exactly like Detective Cassie Maddox, so she ends up going undercover as the victim to find out who killed her. I really like Tana French's writing. She's a fantastic writer and I really enjoyed reading this. I loved the story, the characters, and although it wasn't a perfect read for me, it's still a fantastic one and I highly recommend it. Next up is The Devil of Nanking by Hayder. This tells the story of Gray, who is a student who travels to Japan in order to find a film that she is convinced exists, even though over the years she's been told she is crazy for saying so, but this turns out to be a huge cover-up, and the film she's looking for is related to the Nanking massacre from the 1930s. She ends up meeting someone in Japan who at first doesn't want to help her with her quest, but eventually they form a relationship to try and uncover the truth. And amongst that, Gray finds some friends through a ramshackle house that she ends up renting a room in, and she also becomes a hostess at a gentleman's club. So there's a lot going on, there are a lot of very interesting aspects to the story, and it's pretty fast-paced. It was very well written. I really enjoyed the characters and the storyline, and the fact that it had this historical tie-in was very interesting, and it definitely had more of an emotional impact and definitely stayed with me for quite a long time, and it's one that I think about from time to time still, even though it was months ago that I read it. This was the first novel by Hayder that I had read, and I definitely want to read more of her stuff. Next up, something a little bit different, is The Cormorant by Wendig. This is a thriller with more fantasy and horror elements, and this is part of a series following the main character Miriam Black. She has the power to see how you die by touching you. So this leads her into all sorts of crazy situations and adventures, a lot of them fairly gory. This is the third book in the series, and the first one, Blackbirds, I absolutely loved, and the second one, Mockingbird, didn't quite hit the same mark for me, but it was still a good read, and then this one was back up to the same level as the first one. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It is super fast-paced, action-packed, fun-filled, and whether you love her or hate her, Miriam Black is such an interesting character to read about, and yeah, I absolutely love this series and I can't wait to read the next one. I know Thunderbird came out last year, I think, and I haven't got to it yet, and the next one in the series, The Raptor and the Wren, I believe comes out later this year, so definitely got those on my to-read list. Next up is You Will Know Me by Abbott. And this is more of a contemporary mystery thriller, and it follows a teenage girl called Devon, and her parents have basically focused all their attentions and money, etc. onto her achieving her goal of becoming a gymnast. And honestly, that's not a world I'm really familiar with or even that interested in, but it was absolutely fascinating and you are immediately immersed into that world. And the story follows this family and other families who are in the local gymnastics community, and all of the relationships and rivalries that are in there. And there is a death in the community which affects everyone, and not only are we trying to figure out exactly what happened, but also how that affects everyone and how everyone was related to that. I really like Megan Abbott's writing and her characters. I thought that her previous book, The Fever, was fantastic. I really enjoyed that one, and You Will Know Me was also a brilliant read. And last but certainly not least is The Field of Blood by Denise Mina. This is the first of her novels that I have read, and I definitely want to read more. This follows the story of Paddy, who is a teenager working at a newspaper. She wants to begin a career in journalism, but she's kind of the underdog, and she ends up becoming involved in investigating a murder of a young boy. There is some similarity to the James Bulger case, which is a real life case in the UK some years ago, if you're familiar with that, because the suspects for this murder end up being two young boys, and Paddy is trying to investigate this, and while doing so she burns a lot of bridges with people she knows, her family, her boyfriend. So I found Paddy a very interesting character. She's kind of an unlikely hero, and you're following a lot of her trials and tribulations, as well as reading this really interesting mystery thriller. So I found all of the elements for that really interesting, and it came together really well, and I highly recommend this one. This one, I believe, is the first in a series following the same character, Paddy, so I definitely want to pick up the next one in the series before too long. Let me know if you've read any of these, and let me know what you thought. Let me know if you have any other recommendations. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye!